Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Shimi Kang, and thank you for joining me on Mental Wealth, a place you will learn to heal, understand, protect, and optimize your most powerful asset, your human mind. In today's episode, we're going to talk about this buzzword that we're hearing everywhere called mindfulness. Now, you might have heard of mindfulness, and some people are like, what does this mean? Everything is mindfulness. Nothing is mindfulness. How do we understand this word that is being thrown around and seems to be the answer to almost all of life's problems? So stay tuned, and I'm going to explain mindfulness to you. I often say the most powerful things in life are simple but not easy. And we know how to do them, but that doesn't mean we're doing it. And when we get to the doing, in fact, then we can actually become healthier, happier, more successful. So mindfulness is exactly one of those things. It is simple but not easy. We all know how to be mindful, but that doesn't mean we're doing it. But when we get to the doing, when we actually start practicing and bringing mindfulness into our everyday lives, now we can become happier, we can become healthier, we can become better problem solver, better in our relationships, and definitely better at solving difficult issues and innovating. So perhaps one of the best way to understand what mindfulness is to understand what mindfulness is not. So the opposite of mindfulness is actually multitasking. There's a big myth out there that multitasking is something we can do. In fact, people say, oh, I'm actually good at multitasking. The human brain actually doesn't have the ability to do more than one thing at a time. And the idea of multitasking is really you're just doing a whole bunch of things not very well because you're constantly switching your focus and attention, that energy of your brain from a task to a different task. So multitasking is a myth. Not only is multitasking inefficient, but multitasking actually is very stressful. You got to understand that our brain evolved from when we were hunters and gatherers. And that distracted, frazzled brain that can't keep focus is sending a signal that there's danger, there's something threatening in the environment. Our neurons ask, why can't you focus? Is there a predator? Is there a hurricane? And we may fire that stress response that I've talked about in a lot of different episodes. If you want to learn about the stress response, click here. So now that you understand what mindfulness is not, it's not multitasking, and why multitasking is really not a good idea, and that it can make us less efficient and is actually very stressful for us and really toxic to our health through releasing cortisol and adrenaline. Mindfulness is the opposite of that. It actually can improve our health, happiness, our focus, and our success. Mindfulness is simply doing one thing at a time, giving our full attention to the task in front of us. So you can practice mindfulness when you are doing the dishes, when you are combing your hair, when you're talking to someone, when you're working, when you're going for a walk in nature. It's really just bringing in all your energy, your brain energy, your mind energy, and keeping that focus and keeping present to what is before you. And it sounds simple, but as we all know, and I mentioned earlier, simple is not easy. The reason why mindfulness is so powerful is because it takes us out of that stress response that I mentioned. And when we are fully present and fully focused, we actually develop those neural pathways, the habit of being focused and present. If you remember one of my earlier episodes on neuroplasticity and how habits are formed, you'll remember that I talked about the habits in our brain and our pathways are formed just like the trails in a forest. If you want to know more, click here. So when we walk on the trail of focus, singular focus on the task in front of us, we develop those pathways of focus and intention that brings us to be more efficient to the task in front of us. There's a proverb, I don't know who said it, but it's like, where focus will flourish. And that really, really encapsulates the power of mindfulness. So to summarize, mindfulness is really sustained attention for one thing at a time. It could be anything in your life. The opposite is multitasking, which is trying to do several things at once. For example, eating lunch in front of the computer while you're trying to talk to someone at the same time. So multitasking is inefficient, leads to stress. The opposite, mindfulness, one thing at a time, sustained focus, where focus will flourish, that releases endorphins. It leads to building pathways of focus and attention. It relieves our stress and makes us present in the moment. So your final prescription for today is to practice mindfulness. One thing at a time, keeping your focus as much as you can. This is simple, but not easy. We all know how to do it, but we're not doing it. We're forgetting. We have a myth of multitasking, which really isn't serving us. It's leading to the epidemic of stress and mental health issues we're seeing. So we want to get back to a mindful living, mindful eating, mindful work, mindful communication. All of that is super important. People think it's about slowing down. Well, in fact, it might be slowing down, but ultimately what you're doing is actually improving your productivity, improving your performance. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please don't forget to subscribe and to leave your comments below. I really look forward to hearing how you practice mindfulness. What have been your obstacles in this practice, which is simple, but definitely not easy.